All right, everyone, you can grab a seat. So for the past several weeks, we've been focusing on this front yard mission emphasis. This, like, how do we actually, what would it look like if we actually took the Great Commandment seriously and loved our neighbors? And early on, as I was thinking about this series, I was like, I want to ask my friend Alan to come and share with us. Alan Briggs is a pastor, a coach, an author, and he's my neighbor. And when Alan's one of the first people that I met and became friends with, get to know each other. And I was like, what is this mythical backyard gathering? And it's real. I brought Crawford to one. Brought God to one. And I got the call or the text, hey man, meet in my backyard with a couple guys, bring your own steak. That's all the instructions I got. And that was the start of our friendship. And then like a couple weeks later, we got together for some beverages, and he sat me down, and he had, the question he asked me was, what are your intentions for my city? And that's when I knew this guy loves Colorado Springs and has just a big heart for seeing it flourish. And over time, we've gotten to know each other and hang out. And then when our church made the decision to move from up north down here, our family made the decision to also move from up north down here. And we tried and failed to buy several houses because it was still kind of in that time in the market where it was crazy. And then finally this house came on the market that looked kind of cool, mid-century, it was cool. And I was like, I feel like I know that neighborhood somehow, but I'd only been to Alan's house in the dark. And so I sent him the picture and was like, is this in your area? And he's like, yo, that's $2 Bill's house, you gotta buy that house. So I did. We did. And we've gotten a chance to share life with these guys. But Alan's going to share more about himself and his heart and to us. But one of the things that I just want you to know as he comes is, like, I don't know anybody who has, like, lived out this love your neighbor ethic as much as Alan has. As I've gotten to know him, this guy knows the story of our neighborhood. And you know, knows every neighbor just about every neighbor, I think, by name, and knows the story of who they were and where they've been. And you know, neighbors have called upon him to be their pastor because of the faithful presence that he's had in our neighborhood when they've been going through hard things. And so he wrote a book. He wrote a book recently called Anti-Burnout. That's fantastic. That every one of you should read. No matter what you do for a living, all of us are susceptible to it. It's a great book. I actually listened to it on Audible the 2 days after my concussion in April, because it's all I could do is lay in the dark and listen to Alan's voice. But several years back, he wrote a book called Staying is the New Going, and he gave me that book when he had that question, what are your intentions for my city? He handed me that book, and I read it, and it just grew my love for the Springs. So that's why I invited him to share with us today. So it's my honor to introduce you to my friend, Alan Briggs.
Well, I do love this city very much, and it's not my city in that sense. But I love what God is doing here. I love that you guys have relocated into this part of town, and it has been a joy to get to know Beth and Spence and their family and do life together in the good and the hard, the challenging that is family life. Grateful for you guys, for those who help with the youth, Crawford, Joel, team, awesome. Thank you guys. You've been a huge impact on my son Eli. I know it's summer and we're kind of light and airy and all that, but I'm gonna start with a hard question. Pretty tough, pretty intense, all right? Has your life ever been changed by a crappy cheeseburger? Anybody? Wow, I'm shocked. I thought I was the only one. I hate to tell you, but my life has been. So let me tell you about one of the worst cheeseburgers I've ever had to eat in my life, and one of the best memories I have. When we moved into our neighborhood, which is exactly 1.3 miles from here, right down the street, and approximately 200 feet from Beth and Spence's house, we moved into our neighborhood. We were not in a great season of life. Our family needed some care and some love, and frankly, we needed a place to live. It was one of those times when the market was infused with so many people moving here, and my wife was waiting 6 deep in line to just get into a place that you don't really want to rent, but we just had to move out of my in-laws' house. Yes, I was living in my in-laws' house, so solid super husband award right there. And so we're like, it's time. We got to move somewhere, anywhere. And our friends had said, maybe my parents' place will work. And so we went over to check it out, kind of sight unseen. They said, sure, whatever you were going to pay for a 3-bedroom apartment, just pay for this place. And we walked up and saw it's mid-century modern, like Spence was talking about. It's this cool neighborhood from the 60s. Like, we'll take it. We would have taken anything, honestly, but we'll take it. And so we're sitting there 2 weeks later. You know when all your friends move? And here, like, a good friend either takes you to DIA or helps you move. Like, that's what they do in Colorado. And so we called on our friends that I hadn't asked too many times to take me to DIA, and they moved us. And then everything's in the house. You know that quiet moment where you're like, oh, it's all done. And then this guy walks over, who I did not know, and he hands me a bag with cheeseburgers in it for my family and said, thought you could use a good meal. And I'm like, but why did you hand me a McDonald's bag then? And so he hands me this deep sign of hospitality, and I ate a McDonald's cheeseburger and was welcomed to the neighborhood by folks who folks were calling the Colonel, Charles Ransom. We would get to know Charlie over the years, and here's what I found. So as we start, I would just say this: hospitality breeds hospitality. Hospitality breeds hospitality. Let's start with the simplest 99-cent cheeseburger, and that develops into a relationship, and there's someone saying, like, I see you. I know it's been kind of hard, and let me just provide this first meal. For us, many times it's been the Little Caesars, as some have called hot and sweaties, and bring over a hot and sweaty for $5.99 or whatever inflation has brought it to these days. Like, what we're not talking about is perfection. There are some mythical backyard gatherings, but most times we get together with people, it's not mythical. It's not that great. It's literally just people loving people in the most simple ways. Can I help you with this? Can I help you put your TV up? Do you need a ride to this? Is there anything right now that we can help you do? I know that your family's experiencing a really hard time. That's what we're talking about here with hospitality. I'm not talking Martha Stewart levels. I'm talking a cheeseburger when you're hungry. That's how our story started. And what Spence is talking about, when you move into a neighborhood or you move into a city, you move into a part of town, you enter a story there. There's a story that had gone on long before us. Little did I know the last block party was in 88. Like, last century, 1900s, 88. And we just said, let's just get people together. And we were naive and crazy enough to go like, maybe they'll show up. And they did, with their Tupperware that looked like World War II era Tupperware. And still in great shape, if I must say myself. And they showed up, and like, life begins to unfold around us. But what we didn't realize is that life had been going on a really long time here. And there was a lot of joy, and there was a lot of pain that they bring into that. That's true of every group of people in any neighborhood, anywhere. And so we began to put these things into life and practice, and a few years later, I just thought, man, I got to get this out of my head, and maybe someday this will be a book. And it pulled in these stories and these threads and the ideas that are very, very simple in this book, Staying is the New Going. And so I'll read a couple of excerpts from that. But what I find is that in every place there are cracks. Took us about a year to find the cracks. And I just want to ask you a couple questions to get you thinking this morning. What are the cracks in this place? When you move into a neighborhood, when you live in a neighborhood a long time, maybe you can be inoculated to them. What are the cracks in this place? It'll take a while. And probably the more suburban the place is, the harder to see what those cracks are. You guys who went to Miami this week, pretty easy to see some of the cracks right there. But it took us about a year to go, what's going on here? Why are front porches empty? Why are no kids playing outside? Why does no one get together here in this neighborhood, even though they've lived together for decades? What are the cracks in this place? And secondly, how does the gospel fill these cracks? And I had to ask, what does the gospel say about loneliness? That God puts the lonely in families. What does it look like when relatives have died and people don't have biological families around them? What does that look like for Sue across the street who works the night shift and doesn't have too many people that she knows or interacts with in the neighborhood? In fact, folks had set a reputation that she's kind of cranky. What does that look like for her? What does that look like for Charlie and Jean? What does that look like for Sarah? What does it look like for these real people that we were getting to know? We're in the midst of a loneliness epidemic right now. Epidemic proportions. Surgeon General has called it an epidemic, and I'll share this at the end, but our mayor is calling us to action, and already you guys are stepping up to that. So I just want to read you a few excerpts, because as Spence said, these are real people who I love a lot. And I don't want people to just move in and move out. There are people behind my place. When we moved into our neighborhood, we saw cars, houses, and yards. We saw pleasant neighborhood folks with nicely manicured lawns, mildly friendly people, and a traffic jam twice a day around the start and the end of the school day. It took living there for almost a year before we began to see the cracks. People were disconnected, dare I say, lonely. Many neighbors wrestling with serious health issues and had no close connections. People were embarrassed about weeds overwhelming their lawns, me included, by the way. Parents ignored one another as they dropped their kids off at school and picked them back up at the end of the day. You just start to see the little things. What's going on here? That would lead years later to a call to say, Ray is in the hospital. It's not looking good. He's not doing well with the nurses. He won't let anybody in, but for whatever reason, he wants to see you. I'm going to that. Cancel meetings, go over there to spend time with Ray. It's not good. He's going south. Here's this guy that's been strong and been in the military for years and has a serious disease overtaking his kidneys, and he may be done. This may be it. He may be at the end. And to sit with him, to be invited into that was a special moment. He recovers. Now he lives directly across the street from Spence and Beth. Those are real people. And for whatever reason, sometimes we're invited into that crack. Sometimes it's the person across the street that just says, hey, I'm struggling. Do you want to talk? And it's never, by the way, when you think that people are going to want to talk. It's never the time that's convenient for you. Can I get an amen to that? It's just like, oh, I'm literally going right now and I have a decision to make on this. That's what I know is whatever time you think it will be, it won't be then. Stay ready, my friends. Stay available. Stay open is what we've learned. This one's going to be incredible. And it's just fine. It's okay. And then this one, I don't know, I'm just going to show up. And then hours later, we're having conversation with folks. Sometimes hospitality is more communal. And so one of the cool stories is Sunnyside Church, or formerly known as Sunnyside, now Envoy Church down the way. Spence and I know Corey is the lead pastor there. They sit right across from the elementary school that my kids go to. And the elementary school needed some help. They needed budget help, which they always do, by the way. Public schools need help. They want help. And so they asked, hey, do you know somebody who can build this garden? And so our missional community said, yeah, we'll step up to that. I called Sunnyside. They said, sure, we'll give half the money for that. And because the principal wanted a garden, they got a garden, which is now activated now, and the kids go and use it throughout the summer, and they've added to it. It's really cool kind of thing. Well, as a new principal comes in, I found out this guy is a follower of Jesus, and the first day we had 5 pastors praying over him and saying, we believe God has brought you here, and it's going to use you in some incredible ways. Has gone through a major turnaround, and by the way, is now, he got Educator of the Year and is doing just incredible, incredible work in that place. Morale is up. I just sat with the teachers the other day. God wants to use you in the smallest and biggest ways. That prayer led to them then sponsoring the school again and doing some incredible things, and now all of the performances are hosted across there, and there are people walking into a church building that normally don't walk into a church building. Yesterday, there were around 30 foster parents that are here for a training because you guys have a building and you open up that building. My wife and the other folks that train them are so grateful for that. So communally, you guys will step up. I'm told 9 people have already put the hand up for block parties this summer. That's amazing. How many are you praying for? What's the total? 20. All right. So we got 11 more to step up. And when you say party, it doesn't have to be huge. It could literally be a dinner. It could be something outside. It doesn't have to be exactly what we're going to do. So sometimes it's more communal. Sometimes it's more personal. I want to share a personal and sobering story before we dive into Scripture. There was a couple, Arch and Larita, sweet, sweet couple. I knew parts of their story, but I knew they had a kid that had taken their life many, many, many years before. What I didn't know is that they attended a church, the church actually about 200 yards this way, right behind the school. And this church, when their son took their life in their hardest moments of life, wanted to let them know that this was sin. And they said, that's not our church anymore. Those are not our people. Can you imagine? And the neighbors wrapped around them. The neighbors loved them well through this time. And I only got to know them maybe 5 times along the way, but I loved them, and they'd stop by, and they would smile when they see our kids, and I'd see them with their grandkids. Sweet, sweet couple. Well, his health was failing, and as we got toward the end of his life, the neighbors said, yeah, Arch is not doing great. And so they started to get things prepared. I got a call after he passed away, and his wife actually called me. And I thought, yes, I already heard. And she said, can you come down? I'd love to talk to you. And she said, we don't really know any religious people. I think she even said, you're a man of the cloth. So it's like, I do wear clothes, so yes. Would you do the memorial service? All the neighbors speak highly of you. We don't know you guys that well. And she proceeds to tell me the story of 30 years before, when that was the last time they had attended a church. And so we planned kind of this beautiful memorial service, and we had it again just a few hundred yards over here. And it was actually beautiful and kind of a healing moment for their family to be back in that church. And I got invited in to their family and to their story, and they still kind of pass by. They just sold that home. We have some new neighbors who we need to meet that are just down there in their house. Friends, you never know what the littlest things are going to lead to. But I can tell you this, is that we cannot love people we do not know. You can't love the idea of a person. You can't love the image of a person. You actually have to know the person to love them. And so those 4 or 5 connections bonded us just enough for her to think, maybe, just maybe, I could trust a religious person who is part of a church again. Maybe, just maybe. And God did some incredible things there. So I don't know how, but for years I missed the fact in Scripture that Jesus was causing a ruckus in the in-between places. Jesus was at parties, was inviting himself to parties, was joining in parties, and Jesus liked parties. And a ruckus always seemed to break out when Jesus went to parties with the wrong people, you know what I'm saying? And so we're going to look in 3 different snapshots of that, 3 different threads that I believe braid together beautifully. So here we go. We're in Luke, and you may have heard about some parties. These aren't Jesus' most famous parties. Like the Endless Cabernet situation, like that gets a lot of press for him. But like these are ones that I go, you can really see the heart of Jesus here. So here we go. This is Luke chapter 19, verses 1 through 10. Jesus entered Jericho and made his way through the town. There was a man named Zacchaeus. He was the chief tax collector in the region, and he had become very rich. He tried to get a look at Jesus, but he was too short to see over the crowd. Some of you raised in church are singing a song right now about Zacchaeus, okay? So feel free, continue. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree beside the road, for Jesus was going to pass that way. So Jesus is coming. I mean, it's like Bono's coming. Like, let's get in there, or like Tay-Tay's gonna be here. Like, I couldn't afford to get in there, but we're gonna see them pass by. Like somebody famous is coming by, and I want to get a look. When Jesus came by, he looked up at Zacchaeus and called him by name. Zacchaeus, he said. Quick, that's right. Participatory here. Quick, come down. I must be a guest in your home today. Let me start there. Jesus is that guy who invites himself over to your house. You're like, I know that guy, and I don't like when he invites himself over to my house. We'll just say that. Like, oh, you're having a party? What? Somehow they find out. But guys, by the way, some of our parties that we've tried to sort of control, the craziest things happen. Wait a minute. How did the repo people show up? Literally. How did these people show up? How is half my kid's class here from school? He had taken flyers My oldest son had taken flyers and just passed them out to his whole class. Mom and Dad, you said anyone's invited. Oh, I'm trying to piece together who are all these people in my living room. Like sometimes the best stuff, people just invite themselves in. Zacchaeus quickly climbed down and took Jesus to his house in great excitement and joy. But the people were displeased. He has gone to be the guest of a notorious sinner, they grumbled. Meanwhile, Zacchaeus stood before the Lord and said, I will give half my wealth to the poor, Lord, and if I have cheated people on their taxes, which he had, I will give them back 4 times as much. Jesus responded, salvation has come to this home today, for this man has shown himself to be a true son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and save those who are lost. It's like he's saying, so I've come to be in these exact spaces. I'm in the in-between, between the temple and work, and between where they were going. Jesus is in this in-between space, friends, and parties are this in-between space where you never quite know who's going to come or what's going to happen. It's not all roses, like the block party where the person steps off the curb and she breaks her foot right there. That's not in the plan. Talk amongst yourselves. What do you do after that? Right? It's not all great, but I'm telling you, friends, there's something beautiful in the in-between spaces when we lose control. Now we're in Luke chapter 5, verse 27. Later, as Jesus left the town, he saw a tax collector named Levi sitting in his tax collector's booth. Sound familiar here? Follow me and be my disciple, Jesus said to him. So Levi got up, left everything, and followed him. Later, Levi held a banquet in his home with Jesus as the guest of honor. So this one sounds like Jesus was actually invited. Like he was actually invited to this one. Many of Levi's fellow tax collectors and other guests also ate with him. You catching the theme here? More notorious sinners. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the religious law complained bitterly to Jesus' disciples. Why do you eat and drink with such scum? I sense, knowing Jesus, he's about to tell them. Jesus answered, healthy people don't need a doctor, sick people do. I have come to call not those who think they are righteous, but those who know they are sinners and need to repent. So 2 times Jesus is at a party. 2 times he's judged for not only going to that place, but who is at that place. And 2 times he gives a response to go, do you know I'm here? They had lost sight. They did not know why is he in this place? Why is he here? Why is he there with those folks? And I sense there's all kinds of things going on, but there has to be a bit of a jealousy at the freedom that Jesus is living by and with. So I looked up the word ruckus. A noisy commotion, a heated controversy. Jesus stirring up commotion and controversy by those he chose to associate with. See, here's the thing, friends. We don't know the stories of all the people that come in here. Oh, did you hear about them or that? No, we just moved into this neighborhood. Do you know those folks? Do you know about the incident? No, I don't know anything. Would you tell me? And it's very different as you move in and get to connect with hearts versus, oh, those people here, you know, in that house, oh, that White House down there, yeah. And it's like, I don't know what they're talking about. Friends, what we don't know about people is disconnecting us from them. You know that our brains fill in the empty space between us and other people with negativity, not positivity? Like we're literally wired to self-protect, and we have to fight against that. The first moment of the block party is like, what a sweet couple. I want to get to know them. What an amazing group of folks there. And the fear, by the way, they're feeling as they walk up to go, I don't know who these people are. Maybe you feel shame that you haven't gotten to know your neighbors. Guess what? That's all of us. I need to re-engage with my neighbors. The winter that continues to snow in April and May that we experience here, it's like, oh, it's neighboring season again. I wake up in June and it's like, we got to get our block party on the schedule, which, by the way, all of us have a next step, and our next step happened this week. Me, Beth, Spence, and my wife, Julie, are texting, hey, we got to get the block party on. Frankly, because I got to be accountable that I'm stepping into your church and talking about neighboring, we should probably schedule that. Right? It's okay, guys. Don't let your shame of what you're not doing get in the way of the next opportunity. Something really, really simple, like, hey, why don't you just invite a couple over first? Maybe you come over to our block party and work the grill for us and just see it's not that hard. Literally, it's like cornhole, food, conversation. Like that's pretty much the plan. Unless Spencer's got something up his sleeve, that's about all I got. And then just things happen. Maybe throw some music in there. The context of this next story is Jesus is eating, healing, and being questioned on the Sabbath. Sound familiar? And Jesus is saying, don't invite just all the famous people around, the people that can repay you, the rich. Invite anyone, the ones who want to come in. Luke 14, starting at verse 15. Hearing this, a man sitting at the table with Jesus exclaimed, what a blessing it would be to attend a banquet in the kingdom of God. Already he's saying, yes, I'm in. How great would that be? Verse 16, Jesus replied with this story. A man prepared a great feast and sent out many invitations. When the banquet was ready, he sent his servant to tell the guests, come, the banquet is ready. But they began making excuses. All right, this is going to start to sound familiar. One said, I have bought a field and must inspect it. Please excuse me. Another said, I have just bought 5 pairs of oxen and I want to try them out. Please excuse me. Another said, I have soccer practice for the kids every single night until 2027. And another said, I got married and can't come. Like, doesn't this sound like our culture? It's like, oh man, we have things at school every night until the end of May, which is true, parents. Like, Maycember is real. I'm on vacation. I have so much going on at work. I'm really tired. I'm the guy that never answers text invitations for whatever reason. I'm just that guy. You know that guy as well. I'm tired. The Bachelor ain't going to watch itself. Like, there's so many different excuses. You hear that, go like, but you don't understand. It's going to be amazing. Verse 21, the servant returned. She's laughing. She knows it's true. The servant returned and told his master what they had said. His master was furious and said, go quickly into the streets and alleys of the town. Invite the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame, all those without social status. After this servant had done this, he reported, there's still room for more. So his master said, go into the country lanes behind the hedges and urge anyone you find to come so the house will be full. For none of those I have invited will get the smallest taste for the banquet. Here's what I found. The people who are invited and the ones who actually show up are different. The people who are invited and the ones who actually show up are different. Just put out the invitation. For us, it will probably be cheesy little clip art about a block party that we will go hand out, likely with my kids, because people answer the door when kids are there usually. And we'll just say, here, show up. Like, I don't know who's going to show up, friends. If we are bent on control, we are never going to love our neighbors very well. I don't know what you're compelled by. I'm compelled by the loneliness epidemic right now. I cannot look the other way, especially among men. I cannot look the other way. So if you guys know Kim and Jeremiah Callahan here in your congregation, I've partnered up with them. We're literally starting something we're praying will become a national movement. It's called Gather, and we gather people together, hopefully from neighborhoods all over this city and cities across the country, because we need to know one another. There's something amazing about us knowing the people around us, and guess what? We're suffering from the opposite of that. They say most people have 0 folks they can actually call or 0 proximate neighbors that they know when they hit a hard time. That's sad in this moment. Just knowing somebody's name, just knowing who your neighbors are, maybe having their number, and things will happen to us, by the way, like fences will burn, right, Spence? That's a whole nother story, you know? By the way, sometime we're going to need somebody else when we're struggling. It's not just about serving other people. Sometimes we will need to be served. Friends, I want to give you some advice. Get creative. Number 1, we did a cookie exchange one time. Why? Because my neighbors were really old, and I don't know what old people do. By the way, do not do an ugly sweater party with people who are super old, like in their 80s. They don't get the joke. Do not do it. Yeah, there's another story there, okay? Not funny. But a cookie exchange, we did that, and we had like 7 dozen cookies for my family to eat that next week. So it was the best and worst decision I made that year. So get creative. Number 2, just be you. Just be you. For us, for years, it was watching Broncos games together. It was like the easiest thing because you have 3 hours to chat. Broncos were actually pretty good, so we hit the lottery. We had a lot to cheer about that year, but that was how our families were connected during that time. Things change, but you got to be you. You got to get creative. The last one, just try stuff. I don't know. We had an 80s cover band once, and I was like, this could be a nightmare. It was incredible. It was amazing. But we've also just like, let's just throw the grill out there and see what happens. Guys, try stuff. I have to tell you that it's not always neat. It's not always pretty. And here's the beautiful thing. When you write a book, like, you got to close the book at some point and write it and put it on Amazon and get it out there. But that's not the end of the story. I need to share about one woman, the one forceful opponent of community in our neighborhood. As if the no trespassing, violators will be prosecuted sign wasn't clear enough, she took the time to walk a flyer for our upcoming block party back to our house and slap it on our door. I'm not sure why, but right now she doesn't want to live in a neighborhood. She wants to live in a house. I've learned not to take it personally, just to pray for her. Occasionally, you will come across this reality in your neighborhoods. People have experienced pain, and when you get close enough, you simply can't avoid it. So those are the words about a gal on our street. And let me tell you, it wasn't the end of the story. There was a day when I'm sitting outside. We have a picnic table in our front yard. Again, we're front yard people. Sometimes when you're there, you just get the conversation happening. So I'm sitting at the picnic table. She drives by the night after a block party, and then she backs up. Oh, my heart is beating, and I'm like, uh-oh, because we were up pretty late last night. I don't know, at least 9:45 or something. And so she gets out. By the way, no one has ever had an actual conversation with this lady. And I'm like, oh no, is it a noise ordinance? Like, what's going on here? And she walks up and said, you have a minute? Yeah, I'm just sitting at my picnic table, sure. And sits down. And she said, hey, I want you to know it's not you, it's me. I've had a lot of pain, I've had a lot of hurt, and it's just really hard for us to trust. So I actually like what you're doing. Don't be offended. We're just not going to show up. But you should keep doing it. She was looking out the window the night before watching people connect. And guess what? When she went home, after my heart stopped palpitating as much, the neighbors started to come over and go, hey, so what'd you guys talk about? So anyway, what'd she say? Was she ticked? What's going on? And I said, no, she's experienced a lot of pain, and she told me just a little bit of that, enough to know. And not only are we going to keep doing this, but she likes that we're doing it. You never know what's going on, guys. The end of the story in any book or any moment, or frankly, before somebody moves away, we don't know what's happened in their past. We don't know what hospitality can do, and we don't know what God's about to do in somebody's life. Just take your next right step. Be it a cookie exchange, a block party this summer, but I do want to ask you guys to stretch 20% beyond what you're comfortable with. I'm not telling you to get an 80s cover band in your driveway, but it was phenomenal, and if you have access to one, you should. I'm saying take your next right step. Invite people over. We've had dinners at our house, and they go, oh yeah, guess what? It's our anniversary tonight. And we're like, and you said yes to this? What are you doing here? Awesome. So we need to celebrate you right now. It's fun to participate with the living God and what God is already doing. It's a bigger story that started way before us. It'll go way after us, and God's just letting us into a little piece of that. Guys, we're not as important as we think. So I'm going to let you back into Charlie's story. Where did that cheeseburger lead? Well, this picture of my son with Charlie in a garden is one of those that I actually texted over to Eli, and it's really special to me. I asked Eli as a youngster, so who's your best friend? And he said, Charlie. It's a little bit strange when the man's over 80, and you're like, that's a really cool moment. And so he'd go over there all the time and probably had enough powdered donuts and cookies to last you guys for years as well. There were several times where, like, where are the kids? And then we'd find these lost kids were over at Charlie and Jean's house hanging out. But I would watch this from my back porch so many times. Guys, this is what God may want to invite us into. And then the sad moment when Charlie passed away, and the colonel, we had to give him our final salute in this next picture. Well done. As a neighbor, as a friend. Of course, we'd find out later after that delicious cheeseburger that he was a follower of Jesus, and he was compelled by love. And not only did he have an incredible military career, but he's just an incredible guy. I never knew him as the colonel. I just knew him as the old guy next door who loved our family really well. Our last mayor, who was a nominal Catholic, invited our city to serve the homeless, and said, and I don't know if he believed that the church would do anything, but said, this is our initiative. We want to serve the homeless. We need to get people off the streets into safe and rehabilitative situations. And so called our city and the churches, especially the pastors, come together through 'Cause I Love You, that many of you guys have heard about and are involved with. Churches literally banded together to give millions, which called the city back to the table. They matched it with millions. Grant saw what was happening, and they matched it. Millions and millions of dollars later, we have this beautiful campus at Springs Rescue Mission. And I think our former mayor was pretty surprised what happened. Incredible things happening. My son and I are reading through the book right now of this. There is a whole campus right now, over 50 organizations represented in this. It's amazing what has happened. Take a peek inside. You think, no, this isn't some little rescue mission. Like, it is beautiful inside. We toured this. We were amazed. My son actually raised some funds this last year for them. It's incredible what's happening because our mayor said, hey, church, why don't you step up to the table? And we did, and maybe he was a little bit jolted by that. Well, our new mayor, a dear friend of mine, by the way, came here as an Alliance church planter, came to our city, and now is doing incredible kingdom work. Yemi, by the way, his real name is Blessing, which I find beautifully ironic, is our mayor and is calling us out of the loneliness epidemic to lead the way as a church for 1,000 block parties. 1,000 block parties. The idea is people in isolation don't do well. We saw that during COVID. People who are connected do better. We have resources together. And so Yemi is saying 1,000 block parties. It's time. It's time, church. So we got 9 spoken for. We got 11 more that we're dreaming about and praying about here. So I don't know. I got 2 extra books here. So if somebody puts it, maybe I'll just give these suspense. Somebody puts it on the line as the next 2. Boom, here you go. Grab a book. But I just think this is an opportunity, friends. We need to step up as a church. And let me just remind you, just like with Jesus, guys, parties aren't the end, they're the beginning. Parties aren't the end, they're the beginning. They're not the ultimate aim, they're the vehicle. Friends, I am not a professional party thrower. I am not organized enough to do that. I'm not sure how you make a living doing that, but I'm not a pro at throwing parties. We just get people out there and make it happen. Do that in your own way. Here's the reality. Jesus sat at tables in homes and was in the ruckus in these in-between spaces. We all have different tables. What's yours? You're probably not going to throw some big party the exact way that we'll do it in our neighborhood. Learn from that. Maybe you're a sit down and have, a beautiful 4-course meal. Maybe you're, hey, come on to the backyard and do s'mores around the fire. Friends, if the mayor is calling us saying, church, would you please lead the way? The people of Jesus, would we just lead the way that others go, yeah, I'll get in on that? To say that we threw the first block party in over 20 years, it's not that hard. It cost us like $17 to do that. And the Tupperware and the casseroles were on point. Like, I haven't eaten those since I was a kid. They were on point. So friends, like, this is our opportunity. And so instead of sort of some deep reflection time, I actually want to let you guys sit with what could your next step be this summer. We have this space, this opportunity. Like our master, let's be the people who are stirring up a ruckus in the in-between spaces, who are inviting people out to sidewalks and front yards and porches and parks and fire pits. And some of those will be marginal front yard gatherings, and some of those will be mythical backyard gatherings, and some of those will have kids everywhere, and some of those will feel fairly lame around a table just having a meal and a conversation. But friends, we don't get to control the outcome, but it is our opportunity as the people of Jesus to act like our master and to be the ones calling the party and the ruckus and being around tables, whether we are criticized for it or not. Friends, I want to call us to that, and I want to give us a caution. If we've been following Jesus more than 5 years, heads up, we may be the religious leaders and the Pharisees. I have a Pharisee spirit inside of me sometimes. How did they do this? How could they talk about that? How could they preach this way? How could they vote for this person? We need to be so careful. Right now, downtown, the Pride Parade is going on. And you may see on your social media feeds people who are there today for a variety of different reasons. You may see churches that think and speak and talk differently and people that vote differently in the next season. And so I think it's a call for us to be very, very solemn with how we are getting in the way as the religious people. And also that, how can we call people into relationship and call the party? So during this reflection time, I just want to leave you with two very simple things. First of all, this reminder, we all have different tables. What does yours look like? Little Caesar's Pizza with kids playing out on the trampoline for some. Looks very, very different for others. But I want you guys to sit with this, to reflect, to even pray. One or two people are probably going to come to mind. I really have been meaning to introduce myself to that person. By the way, me too. We have some new people in our neighborhood. It's our turn. Yeah. And one of those people is calling right now. God, on point, as always. What is one tangible way you can care for your neighbors this summer? And care can look very uninteresting sometimes and very simple and doesn't have to look big or glorious. And then what's your first step toward that? And so I actually want to invite you into a posture of saying, Lord, who is it? Maybe as you drive your block today, I don't know who lives in that dark blue home about 3 doors down from Spence. And I want to, and I need to. Haven't checked in with that couple since they had the new baby, and so I'm thinking about this as well. So take the next few minutes to just reflect over these questions about how God might use us this summer to take our next steps.